Hi, I'm Laurie from Madison Bookkeeping. We specialize in private practice bookkeeping. Are you worried that you're not accounting for all of your expenses and perhaps you're paying too much income tax? Well, in this video, I'm going to teach you how to make sure that you maximize your tax deductions. All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Laurie from Madison Bookkeeping. Let's talk about your deductible expenses and kind of understanding what this means. I know you have gone to school for years and I hear it day in, day out. I can help a lot of people, but when it comes to bookkeeping and taxes, I feel like a fish out of water. So let's talk about it on a high level, and then I'm going to get into more detail so you can understand it first at a broader range, and then we'll get into more detail. Okay, so basically, you have income. That is when you provide services and your patients pay you. And you could also be paid through insurance companies and or through copay and self-pay. So that's your money in. So right here I have, this is very big overview. So you have your copay and self-pay income, insurance income. We also put your refunds. If you have to refund a patient, we want that to be a negative income when you're tracking. And also there's other income like interest income. So if you had an interest-bearing savings account and so forth, that would be considered income. And you have to claim all of this, right, on your tax return. Then we have your expenses. I've segregated this piece into two parts. There are certain parts that they're like right off the top of your income. I mean, your income takes a direct hit from these. And that would be if you are paying for anyone like as a subcontractor, as a 1099, your outside biller, the credit card discount fees. And that's a terminology in accounting that you need to get used to. So that's the credit card fees. So if you're using Square, Stripe, I believe SimplePractice is connected with Stripe. So they're keeping a piece of the money of your income, and that is that credit card discount fee, right? So you want to make sure you're capturing all of these expenses or you are going to be paying too much in taxes. So we'll just keep going, but the goal is to accurately calculate every true business expense. Now, we're not looking for personal expenses or anything, but what is truly legitimately a tax deductible expense. So that's what we're going to keep going into. You would also have transcription services. So these are more of, like they're really critical in your business operation. And it's best, and I will show you a little bit what that means to be able to see your income, take away that, and then what's your gross profit. And then we talk about the rest of your expenses, generally called overhead. Okay, so now we're over on to the third category right here, expenses. And these are also the cost expenses. They're still all tax deductible, right? These are imperative for your business and they're truly for operating of your business, right? So we have professional and clinical growth, office and technology, marketing and legal, and that would also be accounting, insurance and taxes, travel and automobile, and other. So now I'm going to show this list in a much more detailed manner. So now you kind of have an idea, okay, these are the sort of expenses I can take, and now I'm going to get more granular. Okay, now let's talk, this is more detailed, and then we're going to get to the chart of accounts that I have available that a lot of people download that is for QuickBooks. So we've gone from an overview, right, kind of a high above overview, and now we're going to look at things in a more detailed way. So again, we had talked about this one's really pretty simple, right? So it's going to be your copay or self-pay, your insurance, and then we're going to say any refunds, we're going to make that it says contra income. So it'd be a negative if you had to give any money back to a patient. We want to track that and be able to see that easily. So we create a code for this, right? And then interest, we just talked about that. That's really simple. So again, now we have anyone we pay outside that's providing services under our business name for us. That would go, as I put those in what we call a COGS, cost of goods sold. And it's basically just helping us get to a very easy to follow gross profit, which I'll show you in a little bit. So again, these are still pretty simple. It's just outside billing, credit card discount fees, transcription. Okay. This is where a lot of people maybe are not capturing all of their expenses and what you really want to zone in on, right? Because I think you would know you should be able to deduct your biller or your transcription, but the other items you might have not been aware that you could be deducting these, and we want you to get, we don't want you to pay more tax than you should. Okay, so we have professional and clinical growth, right? So you're continuing education. So if you go to a workshop, if you go to a conference and you fly somewhere, both the fee for that conference and the travel expenses related to that would be deductible. Clinical supervision, so if you are working with someone, dues, membership, subscriptions, right? So that's associations, anything of that nature would go in there, right? Professional organizations, reference materials, fine. So all of those, I will show you how it actually gets categorized in what we call a chart of accounts in a moment. But this is, again, this is like a little bit more in depth than my first PDF, right? This one. But it's going to become much more detailed when we get over to the chart of accounts. So just follow along. Okay, and then you have rent. So if you're renting a space, right, that is definitely deductible. Utilities, your office supplies, your computer, IT software, right, all of that. You're going to want to make sure you've tracked all of that and you're keeping, good. Well, I'll teach you more about bookkeeping a little bit. So your website, your telephone, if you have a cleaning service, postage and delivery. Okay, so now marketing and legal, and I would say and accounting. That's where I come in. Okay, so like Psychology Today, most people, it's really not like a subscription you're reading. It's mostly to do for the advertising, right? The listing fee. So I have that down there in advertising and promotion. Then you have your professional fees. So if you pay a CPA to do your tax return, if you pay a bookkeeper, and if you pay a lawyer, those all would be deductible. Business licenses and permits. So that's pretty understandable, right? So these would be specific categories. Again, we're getting more granular. Then you have your insurance and taxes. So that'll be any of your insurance you're taking. And then the taxes really has to do with the payroll expenses, right? So the employer payroll tax piece, which is a whole other conversation regarding mental health practices. And if you are the owner, if you are actually taking a salary or what we call a draw, and I do have a video on that, so check that out. Travel and automobile. So you will have to determine with your CPA which type of expense you're taking, if you're taking what we call actual expenses or you're taking a mileage rate. So when we look at my chart of account, it has it so if you're taking actual, but generally most people in private practice aren't having a lot of auto because normally everybody's probably coming to you, but you would work that out with your CPA, what is allowable in the automobile piece. It depends on your business. So that's where you work that out and understand that. Other expenses, bank service charges, different from your credit card discount fee, because that is I have that up in that cost of goods section because it's, if you make $200 for a session and they pay by credit card, the first thing that happens is you lose 3%, right? So it's kind of where are we tracking these things. Interest expense, that's if you have a loan and you are paying interest. It could be an automobile loan. It could be a credit card interest, or it could be just a general like SBA loan, though that interest is deductible. So I'm not going to get into detail here, but like the principal when you pay down a loan would not be deductible, but the interest is. Depreciation, that's if you were to have, let's say, spent $10,000 on furniture, you're not going to be able to expense that in the first year. You possibly could with your CPA, they could take a accelerated deduction, but you would have to work that out. And then we have charitable contributions. So this, again, and I'm going to have all of these for you to click and download them, and you could have it, to help you understand more. But again, now I'm going to get to the most granular, and then I'm going to show you a QuickBooks file, right? But if you understand these concepts that most things are, that are related to your business are deductible, it's going to help you pay the correct amount of taxes and honestly not overpay on the taxes. You should be making sure that all of these items, if you know you've paid for items such as these, that they are accounted for when you give your financials to your tax preparer. And I would really recommend using a tax preparer and not self-preparing. This is just my opinion. I pay a CPA to do my taxes, and I work in bookkeeping and accounting, and I still feel that there is a high level, that's a high level of a degree and licensure. So that's my opinion on that. Now we're going into a very detailed, what we call a chart of accounts. I have some videos that explain chart of accounts and where we would use this. But again, this is another list of expenses that I'd like you to see how granular it can be, right? So this is a chart of accounts that you can use to start a QuickBooks file. And I'm going to get out of anything on the balance sheet piece, and we're going to just look over here at the expenses. Okay, so let's look at automobile expense. If you were to be taking that, you're not doing a mileage, then you could break it down even further, right? To the car wash, gas, parking and tolls, and repairs. But you really do need to find out if it's allowed for you, because usually the business would own the car in order to be taking these automobile expenses. Otherwise, you could speak to your CPA and talk about doing a mileage deduction. Okay, we have bank service charges, business licenses and permits, charitable contributions. These we're talked about again. I just want to go through them in depth. Continuing education, depreciation, like I said, that is if you bought a lot of furniture and it was very expensive, you don't get to normally expense that all in 1 year. That your CPA will help you figure out. You would not be doing that entry on your own. Dues, memberships and subscriptions. And then we have insurance, right? So normally you do want to break out your insurance into different categories between the liability, health insurance benefit, malpractice, and some of these are only if you have employees for like the workers' comp and so forth. Okay, we talked about this before: interest, expense, licenses, and permits. Let me just zoom in here a little so you can see this. And then we get to office, and you're going to have a lot of things that are in that office category. It's just kind of good to have what's going on here is these are sub accounts of office. So if you have a cleaning service, your computer, IT, and software could be combined into one. You don't need to get too specific. Equipment rental would really be more like if you had a postage machine, or maybe you're renting a copier, which for solo practice, or, it depends. Maybe you're not a solo practice. Maybe you're a big, huge mental health practice. Then you would have that more. Office supplies is like papers, pens, paper clips, legal pads, that sort of thing. Postage and delivery. And repairs and maintenance, that would be at the, the office. It's not going to, it's not for your home repair. It's for specific things. Usually kind of like if you pay, sometimes I have to pay an electrician to come to my office and fix one of those big fluorescent lights, or there's just certain things that need to be maintained, right? That would be where you'd use that. Telephone, internet, and cable, that should be kind of segregated. Then we have website, web hosting, and then payroll expenses. If you are a solo practitioner, and it will depend on what type of entity you are. If you're an LLC, you're not going to need this, and you have no employees, you're not going to need payroll expenses because you don't take payroll. But if you are a corporation such as an S Corp, you pay yourself via a payroll company like Gusto or ADP or Paychex or even QuickBooks payroll, then you would need these categories. Printing, I think that's self-explanatory. And see, even here under professional fees, we now have accounting and bookkeeping and legal. And you have reference, rent. Now, so I keep supervision normally up in cost of goods, but just ignore that. And travel. And again, you can then make sub-accounts of travel to be taxi, train, sometimes we call it local travel, that sort of thing. You can do where we have here, where you have the sub-accounts. Then you have other income and other expense. Now we use this one more as a code. If you're not sure where to put something, then you could put it there until you figure that out. Okay, so hopefully I'm not going too fast, but so we started at a very kind of high overview that's not very detailed. And then we went to this, which is much more detailed, and it gives you an explanation. And then you were able to see how this kind of correlates to what we call a chart of accounts, which leads us now into our QuickBooks. Okay, so let me just talk for a minute about why you need QuickBooks and why you should not use a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets are so dangerous, and you could lose $10,000 in deductions with a blink of an eye. I see almost all mistakes in accounting done when they use a spreadsheet, because if one cell or formula gets messed up, your whole calculation is completely wrong, and there's no way you're going to know. Over 20 years experience, just take my word for it, you don't want to live off a spreadsheet. And the second thing is, we could probably save you a lot of hours, because if you automate your QuickBooks and you learn how to do that piece better, or outsource it, your level of error is going to go down dramatically, especially if you follow my bookkeeping process. So there's no point in working really hard to create a spreadsheet that could still be a loser for you in the end. I mean, you literally could lose out on tens of thousands of dollars in deductions because of a couple formulaic errors. So the likelihood of that, it'd be a different type of mistake in QuickBooks, but I'll just show you why you do not want to be using spreadsheets. And I think if you're watching this and you're intrigued and you're trying to figure these things out, you really need to get into a true accounting system and not worry about like a small price for the software that will probably save you thousands of dollars. So now here we are in QuickBooks. This is a demo file, and I want to show you what it can do. So I have posted an entire year of fake transactions just so that you can see what it looks like at year end. So I'm going to go over here to reports. I'm going to show you what all those categories and expense codes we were talking about, what it would look like if you were to get QuickBooks. So I'm going to click profit and loss, and I'm just going to do it for the year, and then I can show you. Because there's a couple things you would give to your accountant, but the most important one would be your profit and loss. So you'll see here in this demo file, what I did was I broke it out by the insurance company. So if you have a lot of insurance companies that are paying you, you can set up these things called bank rules. And as they come in, they will auto categorize to the different income codes. So if at the end of the year, if you're renewing a contract with an insurance company and you're not really sure how much you're really doing in business with that insurance company, you could come and look and be like, matter of fact, this is how much I'm doing with, like here, United Healthcare is a big one, right? Versus a small one. So these can help you make better business decisions later. The other thing is, after you get year over year over year, and you get into having QuickBooks for like 3 or 4 years, you'll really be able to look back and say, well, what was my business like in 2022? I just finished 2025. Do I see growth? How am I doing? So you're not going to be able to do that with a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet. You're not going to be able to run these numbers and compare how much you made with Aetna in 2022 versus 23, 24, and 25. Just not. You're not going to be able to do it. But here you can. The other thing that's great about this is if you're working with an outside biller, and I hear this all the time. They'll say, the biller says I'm making all this money, but I don't see it, and blah, 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 blah. Well, what I can do with a client, if they ask me, and we do not do billing, is I'll say, well, this is how much came in with that from that insurance company last in December. What did your biller say you should have gotten? And if there's an enormous divide in that number, we know there's a problem. Again, you're not going to be able to do that kind of tracking in an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm off my soapbox about that. All right, so then we see how much came in through the credit card processor. And then we go down here, we can look at expenses. Now, my expenses are way low on this fake practice, but it doesn't matter. The goal is that you could run this report and simply give this to your CPA and you are done. And you're not, and if you learn how to automate QuickBooks, you're not going to spend hours on a spreadsheet. I've talked to people, they're literally going through their bank accounts and their credit card statements and they're hand filling in spreadsheets to figure out their expenses. And I would be very willing to bet that they are not capturing every expense. But if you link your bank and credit card, business only, I have a whole series for 2026 on accurately connecting and posting and the whole piece, working in QuickBooks. If you do that and reconcile, your likelihood of having very accurate financials that are ready for a tax return will be exorbitantly better than anything you create in Excel or Google. So in the end, this product can help you save thousands of dollars in taxes. It can make sure that you need to know that your financials are auditable, that if the IRS were to ask you, you could show them a bank reconciliation from QuickBooks and some reports with a general ledger that will explain how you came to your net income number, right? You will not be able to do that with a Google Sheet or Excel. So I would encourage you, if you're not already doing that and you're just starting out with your practice, that you should consider a couple of things. If this seems very overwhelming, you could reach out to myself. Our company services solo mental health practices. There are other outsourced bookkeeping companies as well. You could take some QuickBooks coaching lessons. I offer those. But you really need to learn how to be a true business owner who looks at their financials and isn't scrambling to create a Google Sheet or even a QuickBooks. You want to have this where each month you know how you're doing. I understand that you didn't go to business school and you didn't probably take accounting classes because you're helping people. But it's now you're watching this video because now you've realized that this is another hat you need to wear and or outsource. So if you have any questions, please post them in the comments below. If you're interested in a QuickBooks coaching session or outsourcing your bookkeeping entirely, we offer fixed price bookkeeping. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it explains a lot about, really the necessity to capture every one of your expenses. There's no need to pay taxes on money you shouldn't. All right. I'm Laurie from Madison App Bookkeeping, and I hope you have a great day.